The full deck list for the green starter deck for the One Piece TCG has finally been revealed. Let's talk about it. Well, what's up, captains? Welcome back to the other decks. My name is Casual Dobo, and today we're going to be talking about the green starter deck, the worst generation starter deck for the One Piece TCG. Now, this is among the 4 starter decks that are coming out in Japan on July 8th to officially kick off the release of the One Piece TCG, so it's all very exciting, and we had a lot of it so far revealed, but they just recently put up the whole entire card list, revealing the last 2 cards, so I figured, hey, why not make a video about it and talk about the effects. Now, the thing they didn't reveal was the ratios of what's in the individual package of the starter deck, but I thought it'd be cool since we have the full card list, and I prefer to sort of optimize the starter decks and grab 2 copies of each. That way I have full playsets. I figured, hey, why not also optimize the deck and give my ratios and Dawn curves for what I would do with 2 green starter decks. So that will happen after we go over all the effects. But overall, as a general preview to everything, the green starter deck is very interesting. I really enjoyed the mechanics. It plays a lot like green and Digimon, so a lot of suspend, and there are some abilities to delete suspended Digimon, or sorry, characters. And overall, having, you know, the Supernova's worst generation tribal is actually pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see them all in one deck. So I'm very excited about it, and if you are too, please let me know in the comments down below. And while you're down there, please give the video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I have a feeling that when this video releases, it's going to start off a pretty large kick of One Piece content, just because we're in that final ramp-up stage to the actual release, and so it's all just very exciting, and I'm very excited about this game. It's super fun. But anyway, that is enough rambling from me. Let's just go ahead and jump right into the card list. Alright, and here we are at the card list, and this is actually from the One Piece TCG's official website. I just went into the Japanese site, and then in languages you can actually get English Asia. And so that's why all the cards will look like they have Japanese on them, but if you click into them, we have English translations. So that's going to be my primary source, but before all of this came out, I was getting my information from the One Piece Discord group, which I'll link down below. And then also a huge shout out to the One Piece Cardgame.dev website, where I do a bunch of my deck building. I'll have a link down below for the One Piece Cardgame.dev website as well. But anyway, kicking us off, let's talk about our leader, Eustass Kid. So this is a 5,000 power, 5 life leader card. Supernovas and Kid Pirates typing, and then effect, activate main once per turn. 3, so that means you need to actually rest or tap 3 of your Dawn in order to activate this, and they have to be in the cost area. And then trash 1 card from your hand, set this leader to active. So essentially, if you're activating this ability, your leader Kid can attack twice, which is actually very strong. So yeah, Leader Kid is very aggressive in the sense that it can attack twice, and any Dawn that you attach onto it for that attack, say you're at full 10, you only need 3 to activate it, so keep that in mind. But say you attach 7 Dawn onto it, that's a 12,000 swing twice. So I am really liking the ability on Leader Kid. Next up, we do have Vito. This is a 3 cost, 5,000 power vanilla character, essentially. Part of the Fire Tank Pirates, but does have counter potential with 1,000. And so yeah, in the starter deck meta, so not including any of the cards in the actual set 1 of One Piece, the 3 cost 5k attackers are very used. They're very nice, because this is a natural attacker that doesn't need any Dawn to swing into the leaders. Next up, we have Rouge. This is a 2 cost, 3k power striker, Supernova and Fallen Monk Pirates, but it has an awesome ability of Dawn ×1. If you have 3 or more characters, this card gains plus 2,000 power. So if you do have 3 characters and then you put Dawn onto it, it'll get the plus 2,000, putting out 5k, plus the 1 from the Dawn on your turn. So you can do a 6k attacker, essentially. But much like the starter deck Zoro, because it still has a Dawn attached to it on your opponent's turn, it still gets that plus 2,000, so it is a 5k target. Next up, we have Capone Gang Beige. This is a 1 cost blocker, essentially. 1k power, so nothing too crazy, but having the ability to be a blocker is pretty awesome. And then as a reminder for anyone who's new to the game, even if you have a Dawn attached to Beige, that Dawn is only for your turn. So even on your opponent's turn, it's still 1k. Eroge was kind of the exception. Actually, I take that back. Eroge is the exception. Next up, we have Killer, and we saw this card a lot already. This is a 3-cost, 3000 power character, Supernova and Kid Pirate, but on play, you can KO one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 3 or less. And then also trigger, play this card. So Killer is really good to see coming out of life, just because whatever is attacking, if it's 3 or less, you can essentially delete it or KO it. Sorry, I'm going to get my Digimon and One Piece terms mixed up a little bit. But no, this is really good for taking care of anything small. And to be honest, in especially the starter deck meta, there are a lot of characters that are 3 costs or less that are super problematic if you just let them stay on the board. So Killer is super awesome. Next up, we have Kobe, who is a 4 cost to play, but 6000 power Marine character, or Navy. So this plays a lot like the Frankie in the red starter deck, or page 1 in the purple starter deck. And honestly, 4 cost to play, 6k power is a pretty good attacker for the starter deck meta. The only thing that I noticed, and this is a bit of spoiler for the rest of the deck, there is no way to cheat out the Kobe like there is in the purple starter deck, you know, with the ulti page 1 combo. But the fact that this is a 6k attacker is pretty good, because that means if you swing into your opponent's leader, they need to boost their leader by about 2k in order to negate the attack. So the 6k attackers are adding a lot of pressure to the board and a lot of pressure to our opponents. Next up, we do have Jewelry Bonnie. So this is a 1 cost to play, 1000 power Supernova / Bonnie Pirate, but it has an ability. Activate main 1, so you need to tap one of your Dawn in the cost area. Now you can rest this card to look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Now reveal 1 Supernova type card and add it to your hand. And that can be either a character or an event. Then place the rest of them at the bottom of your deck in any order. So for this starter deck, this is a very good searcher. The fact that it's a 1 cost to play means that you can get that turn 1. And I believe the way most people have been playing this is that you can activate that ability even on the turn you play it. So this is a very good turn 1 play. And the fact that it gets any of your Supernovas is pretty solid, because obviously all of our Supernovas that we have in this deck are the ones that have those abilities and just have added value once they go into the board. So I really dig Bonnie. Next up, we have Scratchman Apu. So this is a 2 cost to play, 3000 power Supernova / on-air pirate, but it does have an ability that says Dawn ×1 when attacking, rest one of your opponent's Dawn cards. So this ability is pretty solid, because oftentimes your opponent, whether they're bluffing or not, they're going to leave some Dawn up if they have event counters. And so being able to rest one of your opponent's Dawn in order to sort of prevent them from using the Dawn to counter with is pretty solid. Speaking of counters, he does have really good counter potential, because he has plus 2000 as a counter. Moving on to the next card, we do have Law. So this is a 5 cost to play, so kind of on the more expensive side, 6000 power, but it has a pretty awesome effect. On play, set one of your Supernovas or Heart Pirates type rested characters with a cost of 5 or less, so that's a pretty wide range of things, but make that active. So essentially you could attack with one of your Supernovas or Heart Pirates, and then play the Law card to unsuspend it, and then attack with it again. And as you can see from this, as well as the leader card, the whole point of the green starter deck seems to be getting value out of doing multiple attacks, multiple checks into your opponent's life per turn. So in that sense, it's a very aggressive deck in a much more different way than the red starter deck is aggressive. But no, very good card. Next up, we do have Basil Hawkins, so another 5 cost to play, 6000 power, but has a very cool effect. Dawn ×1, once per turn, and on your turn, so this does need 1 Dawn attached to it when attacking. If this character battles your opponent's character, set this card to active. So most likely this is going to be the card that you'll want to swing into your opponent's characters. And 6k power is nothing to sneeze at. We talked about it a little bit with Kobe, but that's just a very good natural attacker that adds a lot of pressure to your opponent to try and handle it. So Basil Hawkins, surprisingly good card. Next up, we have Heat. So this is a 2 cost 4k. Vanilla essentially does have counter potential in plus 1000 and is a Kid Pirate. Is overall a pretty solid vanilla in the starter deck meta. Once we get into the first set, OP01, we might see this kind of fall to the wayside. And then next we have Beepo, So this is a 1 cost 3k, very much like the Jin Rummy of the purple starter deck, right? Minx and Heart Pirate vanilla has counter potential. Once again, it'll probably fall to the wayside once we get to the first set. And then next up we have the Eustass Kid character card, which is 7 cost to play, 7,000 power. You know this is gonna come in as a 2-of in the starter deck package. But Supernova Kid Pirate has a blocker, which is pretty awesome. And then even more awesome, Dawn ×1, at the end of your turn, set this card to active. So this is actually an ability that I really wanted on the Crocodile blockers, but it's cool to see it here and makes a lot of sense. But that Dawn ×1 ability essentially makes it so that you can attack with Kid, who is a 7k attacker. That's a lot of power to overcome if you're the opponent. And then at the end of the turn, it goes to active, which is wild. In Digimon, we talk a lot about boss monsters and kind of getting into those megas that become the core part of your strategy. And I can see Kid being the boss character of this deck. Now, admittingly, 7 costs to play is a bit steep. And on the first turn it comes out, it is only a 7k blocker. I say just a 7k blocker like it's a bad thing. But no, it is protected from most things because it's so high costed, except for, I believe, Sables from the blue starter deck can return anything 7 cost or less. So that's really the only thing that could potentially touch it. But as soon as this thing comes onto the board, the clock is ticking on this match. So yeah, Kid from the starter deck, character Kid, very good. And then moving on, we do have X Drake, so this is a 4 cost 5k attacker, Navy, Supernova, and Drake Pirate, and has a pretty interesting ability. Dawn ×1, your turn. If this character is rested, your Supernovas and Navy type leaders and characters gain plus 1,000 power. So the card does have to be rested and there does have to be a Dawn attached to it, but honestly it's a pretty solid ability if you can get it off. And also, it sees itself. So most likely you're going to put 1 Dawn onto it, so it's a 6k attacker, swing into your opponent's leader, and then because it is now rested, it gains the plus 1,000, so it's 7,000. So yeah, I would say that X Drake is one of those cards that if you can see it by turn 2, it's probably worthwhile to play, because it's just going to give you a lot of value as the match goes on until your opponent deals with it somehow. Then moving on to the events, we do have Scalpel, so it's a 1 cost to play counter event essentially. So counter, your leader or one of your characters gains plus 2,000 power for this turn, for this battle I mean, and then set one of your Dawn cards to active. So essentially, it plays for free. And then trigger ability, trigger, set up to 2 of your Dawn cards as active, which is okay. Honestly, this trigger is only really good if you have event cards already in hand, and if you did, you probably left some Dawn up anyway. So the trigger here is just okay. Next up, we do have Repel, so this is 2 cost counter, and then your leader or one of your characters gains plus 4,000 power for the battle, then set one of your Dawn cards as active. So this one theoretically only costs 1 because you're unsuspending one of your Dawn that you used to cast it, and it's a stronger counter. Really good for emergency situations, or if you have both a Repel and a Scalpel in hand, then, you know, first counter you use the Repel, it will set one of the Dawn to active, and that way you have 1 Dawn available for Scalpel. We'll see how often those scenarios pop up in the actual game, but that is something that you can do. And then the last event card, and I believe the last card in general, is Straw Sword. So this is a 2 cost to play event card that says main, rest one of your opponent's characters. So for all the Digimon fans who might be watching this, this is essentially almost literally Flower Cannon. 2 costs, suspend something. The trigger here is also interesting. Play one of your Supernova type cards with a cost of 2 or less from your hand. So you could play, you know, Capone, you could play Rouge. There's a couple of different targets for this, which are pretty cool. The only, you know, kind of limitation is that it does need to be in your hand. Alright, so those are all the card arts as well as the effects for the green starter deck, worst generation starter deck. So let's go ahead and show you what my optimized version of the green starter deck would look like. Alright, so here we are at the Dawn curve, and you will notice this is skewed a little bit differently than the purple optimized starter deck that I showed sometime last week, right? This one actually favors the 1s and 2s a little bit more, and so it's less of a traditional bell curve, and it is kind of more weighted towards the lower end of stuff, and that's mostly because the lower end of this is, you know, pretty valuable. There's a lot of good effects that come from our low costed supernovas, and then a lot of our events, almost all of our events, are in the 1 to 2 ranges, so that might be pushing our ratios a little bit, but overall I think this is a pretty solid curve. So let's go ahead and jump into the actual ratios of what I have in this optimized starter deck. Alright, and here we are at the ratios, and so I'm going to go through this real quickly because we've already gone through the effects, but starting us off with our leader, so obviously 1 copy of Eustass Kid, we can only have 1 copy. 4 copies of Capone Gang Beige. I think blockers are super important in this early meta, and so having as many cheap blockers available to block is really good. Next up, 4 copies of Jewelry Bonnie, and you're probably wondering to yourself, why so many? I do want to see Jewelry Bonnie, especially in the early game. It is vulnerable to counterattack, so if your opponent ever gets tired of you searching your deck for all the stuff you want, they can pretty easily knock it out. So it's good to have some replacement in hand, but also the Eustass Kid leader ability has to discard 1 card, and so at that point, if your opponent isn't really messing around with Jewelry Bonnie and still allowing those effects to go off, you can use the spares in your hand as fodder for the Kid effect. So that's why we have 4 copies there. Next up, we do have 3 copies of Urouge. 3 copies definitely feels like the minimum that you should put into this optimized starter deck, just because it does get such good value from having a pretty wide board. And if you're playing green properly, I mean, there's a lot of characters in here, you can get to 3 characters on board pretty easily. If you want to bump this up to a 4, feel free to do so. I think it's really good, but at the time of building this, I was valuing some of the other cards a little bit more. Next up, I do have 4 copies of Scratchman Apu, and this is actually the card I would maybe knock down to 3 in order to make some room for that Eroge if you want to make a 4th. Just because I think it has a really cool ability if your opponent is playing a pretty event counter heavy deck. But if you're not and they're just kind of attacking with characters and utilizing all of their Dawn on their turn, then Scratchman Apu doesn't really have the same type of value. And so I'd be comfortable knocking this down to a 3. I think the only reason I wanted this at a 4 was because of the counter potential at plus 2000, which is just super solid. So yeah, tough choices to make with the ratios on here. But for now, and primarily for the counter potential, I had it at 4 copies. Next up, we have 4 copies of Killer. This is a 3 cost to play. That trigger ability plus that unplayability, which is super solid, can knock out a lot of things, especially in the starter deck meta. So 4 copies of Killer is kind of, I would say, is a requirement. Moving on, I do have 4 copies of Veto. There's 3 costs to play, 5k. I think natural attackers in the starter deck meta is super important, and so any chance I have to play a 5k attacker, I'll take, so super awesome. Next up, 4 copies of Kobe, and that's just because he's 6k and has counter potential. Then moving on to our next character, we do have 4 copies of X-Drake. Like I mentioned in the effects thing, I think it's super useful. I think it's great utility if you can get it on turn 2 or turn 3, depending on when you went first. Whenever you have 4 Dawn available, to play that and then just start getting the additional bonuses from its abilities. Moving on to our 5 costs, we do have 4 copies of Law. This unsuspends something, so that's just extra value, and it's a 6k attacker. And so I'd say this is the main character you want to see to sort of enable a lot of your multi-attack strategies. Moving on, we do have 3 copies of Basil Hawkins. While I like the ability a lot, I think 4 copies of it would just be a little too much, especially since it does not have counters on it. So I think 3 is cool and definitely something you want to prioritize if you're playing a blocker-heavy opponent. Speaking of blockers, we move on to the last character. This is the 7 cost Kid character card. And this is just the boss monster. I would equate this to, you know, a level 6 or level 7 in Digimon that you really want to see. But the reason I put it at 3 costs is because that 7 cost is a bit of a hindrance, especially if we see it too early. I mean, it clogs up our hand for at least, what, 3-4 turns? I would much rather see the Jewelry Bonnie early game, and that way I can go sort of searching for the Eustass Kid character card. So that's my justification for the 3. And then moving on to events, 4 of Scalpel as a 1-cost counter I think is just pretty solid. 2 copies of Repel, just because in my own personal playstyle, I've never really left up too much Dawn. It feels bad to leave up 1 for like guard point or something in the red starter deck. So leaving up 2 is just like, doesn't really mesh with my playstyle, but I think it is solid enough to still include in the starter deck. And then like I said, if you have that Repel Scalpel combo in hand, leaving up 2 does seem pretty worthwhile. And then last but not least, I have 4 copies of Straw Sword. So this is our 2-cost suspended character, and honestly I think this is probably the best event card to come out of the green starter deck, just because I think it has a lot of added utility, especially going outside the starter meta into set 1. Like, I can foresee this being an auto include in the red-green Luffy leader deck that anyone would build. So yeah, that is the green starter deck for the One Piece trading card game, both the card list as well as my optimized version of it. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about the ratios. I know, especially in the starter deck meta, that we're maybe valuing the 1s and 2 costs a little bit too much, but that is what we're going to be playing with for about 2 weeks until we get the really awesome cards from the Romance Dawn set 1 booster boxes of the One Piece trading card game. But in my personal opinion, unlike the other starter decks, the 1s and 2 costs in this deck are super powerful. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable about this curve. And then something I might have forgotten, if I went back and edited, you'll know, but it does have 40 counters in here. Granted, you know, 6 of them do come from events, but that would mean that there are 34 character-based counters in this deck. But anyway, I'm super excited about green. I think green has an awesome playstyle. I love the ability to unsuspend things, to suspend things on our opponent's board. And as someone whose, you know, main card game is the Digimon card game, and then trying to learn the One Piece card game, it makes it feel a lot more at home. But yeah, I think that'll do it for me. So thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And captains, remember, build what you like, play what you love, and I'll catch you in the next video. Have a good one.